Tuesday, 11th of July, 2023, back for another episode, Tiger Town podcast with your hosts, Zach and Toby. How are you, Toby?
Good to be back. Good to be back, mate. Very good to be back. Happy days.
Good
Had
to have you,
a
mate. Good to have you.
had a week off. Had a week off. My brother Todd subbed in for me. But good to be back. Good to chat about some Tigers, no matter how upsetting some things might be. Quite glad I wasn't on the last one, to be honest. That would have been. I listened to it. It was a little bit. Look, you guys put a very good spin on it. Let's not. Let's not beat around the bushes on that. If I was on here, it would have been a little bit down in the dumps, depressing, angry, all that jazz. So probably a good thing I wasn't on it. But yeah, no, good to be back.
Yeah, mate, we carried the cross, so to speak, for you last week, I think.
You did. But yeah, thank Todd for that. And he's always welcome to join whenever he wants. But yeah, this is my podcast, not my brother's. So let's keep it that way.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it, I guess. Mate, you've had a little bit of a hiatus, and we had a bye ourselves, and then obviously coming off the back of that Cowboys game at 74 Blot. It hasn't all been happy and rosy in Tiger Town of recent times, and there's a few other things obviously to talk about as well. But mate, what are your thoughts on the last little run of runabouts for us in the last month or so?
Oh, it's been disappointing because both you and I were in agreement that we were definitely moving forward, regardless of what a lot of the score lines were showing. But yeah, it just seems like there's a couple of backward steps that have occurred. Some due to certain personnel not being there. We know how much once the attack really started understanding the way Appy plays, he leads from the front in attack in defense as well. He's always off the line really quick. There's no sugarcoating how much of an impact he is and how much of a loss he was. But also, he doesn't make all the tackles. So a 74-0 scoreline is pretty diabolical. So I was hoping a few heads would roll because of that. But, one, we probably don't have the people to step in unless we bring in juniors. But two, Sheens doesn't seem to do that, as we know. So, but yeah, and then
Doesn't seem to bring in juniors, you mean? Or
no change, even if there's a flogging. Oh no, we'll be right.
He does, yeah. He does tend to stick relatively solid, although he did make a few changes, I guess, off the back of that Cowboys game. But
a lot of them were forced changes. It wasn't like he wanted to or he decided to. They were injuries.
Yeah, I guess you're right to some degree. You can only do what you can do too when your pickings are relatively slim, I think, across the club. Especially when you look at first and reserve grade, there's only so many options and changes that you can make. And it's not like people are knocking the door down to get shots. So
no, that's true.
I guess that's a predicament. And when injuries and things hit, that's going to exacerbate it, make it even worse. Mate, we'll obviously get to the game this week against the Knights a little bit later in the show, but I must say that immediately seeing Appy named in the side this week has brightened my mood and made me, I wouldn't say confident of going up to Newcastle and getting a win, but certainly buoyed by the fact that he's in the side.
Definitely. Like, our listeners recall at the start of this season, I thought, like, I was a little bit vocal of the fact that Appy just wasn't the same player he was at Penrith. But you, as being an astute football mind that you have, sort of brought it to everyone's eyes that it wasn't so much that Appy wasn't performing, it was everyone else around him wasn't up to his level. And so as we started to, I guess, lift our game and get to the standard that Appy brings, it was very clear how dynamic he is and how important he is to our side. And having him back is just a huge tick. It's a huge tick for us. So very excited.
Yeah. And I think, when you mentioned injuries earlier and the role that played to our sort of downturn, over the last month or so, culminating in that Cowboys game. I don't think it can be understated. And Todd and I spoke about this last week. How important Appy is to the side and the club in general. Not only what he brings in attack, but his leadership. You look across the locker room, you see him lacing up. That's got to give you confidence. You're going to grow a leg or two. And the big one that I mentioned last week in the conversation was that he leads our tempo in attack. So he leads our line speed. He's very often first man contact right in the middle there, and he gets through good 40-odd tackles a game at the very least. So I think personally that Appy really does lead that tempo quite a lot, particularly in defence, line speed, kick chases, stuff like that. And so I think that's something that we did miss a lot through the middle. As serviceable as Jake was, he's certainly not a like for like, at least in the defensive mindset. Certainly not attacking either, I guess. But those are the little things that I think Appy doesn't get enough credit for. So, I just wanted to mention him being back in, I guess, off the back of you referencing the fact we've had a couple of injuries and that played a role. I think it played probably a bigger role than maybe we gave it credit for at the time. But hell, we're missing 3/4 of our spine, aren't we?
We are. And look, let's call a spade a spade. Wakeham is passable, but he cannot carry a team. It's just not his role. He's there probably as your stock standard half that can sometimes direct a team around, but he needs that leadership as well. He's still young. He's only 23, so he's still quite young himself. And I think you'll see how much of an impact Appy will have on him in terms of giving him a little bit more relief of directing the team around. Like we talked about this at the start of the year, our first trial match against the Warriors. We were like, I was very adamant Brandon Wakeham is not a first grade half. But then again, as you have tendency to do, is shine the new light on some people's thought processes and things. And you brought up the fact that, well, it was an extremely young side and he's young himself, and it was a bit of responsibility for him. So I think you'll see this week, a probably more, what's the word I'm looking for? Probably a more mature footballer in compared to what he has been. He'll probably be a little bit calmer in a lot of things. But that's what Appy brings. Appy just brings that, we've got that to an extent with Clemmer. Clemmer is a warhorse, old head on his shoulders, but he's a bash him and get up forward. He's not there driving our line speed, driving our forwards over the advantage line, things like that. So I'm so happy to have him back. And, that's, it's off our performance against the Sharks. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, because that scoreline should not have been that scoreline regardless. You'll see, I think we are a different, I think we have a good chance of rectifying a very poor performance that we had against the Knights at the start of the year.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think having Appy back in that side is, obviously it goes without saying it's going to boost our chances, but at the very least, I think he's going to be a decent element of glue to that side and motivate them from that point, I guess, from that side of things. Mate, the Sharks game. So final score 28-12, is that right?
32-12, 36-12, I think.
32-12, 36-12.
Yeah, because I personally think it most definitely should have been 18-12.
To us?
No, to them. I don't see how it was scored again. They still should have won. They were the better attacking side, but 3 of those tries should not have happened.
Yeah, so before we get into the individual instances of those tries, obviously one of them was the Tommy Talau no try, which I think probably jump ahead and say we both agreed that it wasn't a try.
Mm-hmm.
Mate, what did you make of their approach to the game? How do you think the boys played? What did you like about the stuff that they did on Saturday? Thursday. Sorry.
Thursday, yeah. It's been almost a full week. Look, I think that we can both agree that the way the back row is structured is better for everyone. It was, Bateman tightened up that right side. Pole was strong in the middle. And funnily enough, I think Safar surprised me the most. That ball to Bloor, wow. Like, just wow.
Mm.
That was perfectly timed, right at the line. Bloor did very, very well in running a perfect line through that hole. But yeah, very, very surprised with that. I think, I think there was a lot more want is probably the way I'm sort of wording that. There was a lot more, passion's probably not the right word, but it's more, there's that feeling that we don't want to be embarrassed again. So there was a lot more effort than there was against the
Yeah, they wanted
Sharks.
it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
And you could see that. And it's all those 1%ers that we always talk about, stuff like line speed, kick chase, all that sort of stuff. Even contesting. We didn't contest all their kicks. We didn't get all our kicks right, but we definitely contested
yeah.
on a healthy number of them, I guess. And to that point, they made a couple of errors from bombs. And you watch stuff like that and you go, that's it baffles you why that doesn't happen more often, I guess, to be perfectly frank. When you see people get a result from kicks, our side in particular, and it comes off the back of contesting it, you got to wonder why many times. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that they had a much better showing, and obviously that scoreline flattered the Sharks, there's no doubt. 18-12 it was when Tommy Talau pulled in a high ball. Now, I would say probably before about 2003, 2004, that's try every day of the week. It probably was for about 100 years. Because he went up for the ball. It was a contest and he came down with the ball and scored the try and planted it fine. He does at some point, though, the ball goes from two hands to one. It then touches Hines' arm briefly and then he regains control on the way to the ground. Letter of the law, that's a knock on. I'm happy to concede that, happy to cop that one.
Yep.
But then obviously we go into the next three tries after that, which is obviously the Katoa try, the Nicho Hines try, and was it the other Katoa try?
Yeah.
I forget the final one. So Katoa knocks the ball on down the field. I think it was the very next set, wasn't it?
I want to go all the way back to the actual Talau try. They went over that with a microscope, but yet they somehow missed Nicho Hines touch the ball before it touched Talau. That should have been a goal line dropout. They should have never even had that chance. That's the thing I don't understand. And, I've talked about, I've used the word a fair few times, conspiracy theory. But how in that exact same frame, in the exact same motion, you don't see that when everyone else is? Because even the commentators said it. Even the commentators said, well, what about the Nicho Hines knock on? Oh, okay, they're not looking at that. And then they just went on. That's the thing I don't like. How that can be let go is baffling again. And there's so many times we've talked about this on this pod about how it goes up to the video ref who have every angle available. They have slow motion. They have, zoom, everything. And they still miss it. And when I say miss it, I use that with air quotes because something tells me they didn't miss it. Because it's not, it's very, very, it's very, very, it's very, very obvious. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's, as you said, to use your word, baffling. It is baffling because their job is to make sure is to check everything, every component. If there's a contest, you need to make sure that contest is cleared. Now, I don't remember hearing the video ref in that instance actually clear the contact of Nicho into Talau. I don't recall him making mention of that. So that's just something he's missed. We've seen a myriad of instances this year where a try is scored from a kick and the players are offside by a hair, but a visible hair, whether it's a foot or a half meter or something. It's on the video replays that you see, yet they don't bother even checking that. They should have a checklist on stuff like that they must check and go through because the process is supposed to be rigorous. Either it's a try or it's not a try. And if you're going through instances where tries could be disallowed, something like a kick, for example, the very first thing that you check is are the chasers that are involved onside. If they're not, you don't bother checking anything else. So if Talau is onside, you clear that, you then move to the contest. During that contest, you then need to look at both players and see, one, who touches the ball first? Do they take control? Do they lose it? And then you've got to see what the interactions are in the air as well. So, yeah, look, obviously it's a no try. I can cop we didn't get the ball back off the back of that. So that's one of those rough calls. I'm not tearing my hair out about that. To be honest, it wasn't as if we were denied a certain try. As we've had
I'm not worried about the no try at all. I agree
we've
with
had we've had worse tries go against us in the last couple of years, no doubt. So I can cop that one. But yeah, if you're happy to, we might move on to the next one, which was the Katoa try. And to your point, they confirmed that try within the space of about 15, 20 seconds or something there or thereabouts. I only saw 2 replays live from what I saw. I think I was watching Channel 9, which was a fool to be me to be watching the Channel 9 coverage. But yeah, I only saw a couple of replays before they confirmed that try. And Katoa clearly loses control of the ball and knocks it on. Clearly. Clear as day. Clearer than the Talau one.
Yeah. And this is the thing. Like, you have instances like this and examples like this. And from somebody like not a avid Tiger supporter who follows them all the time, sees this happen week in, week out, they see something like that, they'd be baffled. They'd be sitting there going, how was that given? And then we sit there and like, because this is the Tigers and we get calls like that against us all the time. So it's just like, in all honesty, like we'll go over the other 2 tries and stuff like that. But one mistake like that, I can cop on the chin. I cop on the chin, but I cop it hard on the chin. 3 that very clearly went up to the bunker, and yeah, it's and not exactly not not looked at properly at all.
Yeah,
it's just frustrating. It's so frustrating.
And is it a case then of many people? I've actually heard this argument, whether it's by punters or media personnel, it's almost along the lines of, it's just the Tigers, or it's something like it's just the Tigers, or something along the lines of they mention the final scoreline. They say, what is so what that one try or those 2 tries? It was 36-12 or 32-12. What are you whinging about? They did you easy, and it's a completely moot point because you start an entirely parallel universe. If Katoa is correctly ruled to have knocked on, it all of a sudden is 18-12, and we've then got a 7-tackle set and 20-meter restart. The game then goes in an entirely different direction. It might go in a similar direction, but at that point, compared to what did happen, the game could go in an entirely different direction. We've got 7-tackle set, we've got possession in a 6-point ball game.
But it's also like you hear it time and time again how important momentum is, how important it is. Now, what that did was we had a lot of that momentum heading into after the second half. We had a lot of it. And if all these calls went correctly, our momentum wouldn't have really swung that much, I don't believe. Or it could have, but there's a highly unlikely because momentum is a very hard thing to swing without scoring a try or without, something decent happening or, one of those big shots happening or things like that. But we had all the momentum. And then the poor decision from the Talau knock on, and then that completely swung momentum. It halted everything we were building because you have to think of it too. Like I sometimes sit there and, wonder what must those senior players that have played for other clubs be thinking? Like you can see sometimes that Bateman's probably looking around going, I don't understand how this is happening. I don't understand how these are getting so wrong. Appy, I said it in a couple of pods ago, you can see Appy just looking frustrated going, he's come from Penrith where he gets all the calls go his way. Then he comes to the Tigers and realizes, oh, there is actually another side to the coin. And so you think about the younger guys, they probably sit there going, what's the point? We can try our asses off. We can do everything we can. But when these calls don't go our way, and they literally should, it's not, a 50-50 call. It's not a bounce of the ball. It is literally a call that should go our way. They put their hands up and they go, well, what can we do? What's the point?
Yeah, I know. And that's really frustrating, particularly for a side that's trying to scrape their way up the bottom of the table.
Oh, but
And
the Sharks need to
you
be in the
need
top
that.
four. You need them to be in the top four. That's probably what they're thinking.
Yeah. As I've said repeatedly to you, I'm not quite with you on that level of conspiracy, but I understand the sense of it exactly. And I played a fair bit of footy and a fair bit of sport, I must say, growing up, a lot of different sports. And I played in some really successful sides, but I played in a lot of sides that really struggled. And I tell you firsthand that it damn well feels as though you just don't get called in those situations. And we've spoken about unconscious bias and stuff like that before. Yeah, look, maybe that's a thing, but I don't know. But to be honest, that game should have been a lot closer. And I don't think many of us entered that game expecting to win, considering not only the form we're in, the form they were in, where we find each team on the table respectively. The fact that we're missing 3/4 of our starting spine. The only spine member we're not missing is a 7-game rookie, a 21-year-old fullback who wasn't even playing football 18 months ago. And then our replacement 5'8" got scratched from the game the day before, and we had to bring in a 32-year-old reserve grader to make his club debut. So, considering who we had on the park the other night, if you take those few calls out, it's a one-try game.
And that's
And so
something you can be
that
proud
point,
of.
yeah, from that point, there's probably not a lot more we could have asked of them. And they weren't perfect either. They had a lot of improvement in their game. You look at the bounce of the ball in certain areas. That beautiful kick Wakem put through for AJ, and it just tunnel balls under him right in front of him. A Melbourne or a Penrith, or not so much a Roosters this year, but a Rabbitohs or a Brisbane or someone, that pops up right into the breadbasket for them. And the covering defender slips over and he runs around under the post all the time in the world. Yeah, just some clubs, the ball just tends to bounce for, and yeah, it's few and far between for us. But if you strip away some of that stuff, I guess that was a performance in many ways to be proud of, considering, yeah, not only who we're missing, but the age of that side that you alluded to before. They mentioned it on the coverage I was watching, something along the lines of 23-year-old average age or something.
Youngest side we've ever fielded.
Yeah, there you go. And that includes a side that has the likes of Bateman and Clemmer and these types of guys in that side. So yeah, look, losses are never enjoyable, but yeah, I guess coming off the back of that 74 blot, they had to respond, and they did, considering we fielded almost exclusively a reserve grade side, particularly that back line. Todd and I mentioned that last week. We actually went through everybody playing 7-1 or 1-7, and I could have sworn that exact 1-7 had turned out for the Magpies this year earlier. But anyway, I digress. That is where we are at the moment. So anyway, moving on a little bit. Who caught your eye in that game? You mentioned a couple of names there.
You don't want to talk about the 2 other tries that shouldn't have happened.
Oh yeah, sorry, we can. I got a bit away, and we're harping a bit, but let's go through them. So the Nico.
I want to harp. Isn't this the whole point?
I'll talk about that one.
Well, isn't this the whole point of this pod? Is to just basically vent, and it's cathartic. That's what we do.
Oh, quite possibly, mate. Yeah, it's all cathartic. But I'll talk about the Hines one because I actually forget the third one that you're talking about. So the Hines one for me is as cut and dry as it comes. And whilst you refocus your camera there, I'll go through why I think that it's that way. And it's not because he promoted the ball for mine. It's because we saw with Steph earlier in the year, if you recall, that he promoted the football when sliding towards the line, which not is not in and of itself a double movement by default if your body ends up in the in goal. Nico Hines' body does not end up in the in goal. So he does slide, but he slid from about 3 meters out to about half a meter out, where only the ball and his arm was in, and does the world's biggest promotion. So it completely blew me away, the fact that they even needed a replay to rule that a double movement. How it even went up as a try from the soft call from the ref in the first place is almost hilarious. Had he slid into the in goal, yeah, that's a try. By the letter of the law, we had one of them with Steph earlier in the year that was contentious at the time. And it's quite remarkable, actually, how much chat that got in the NRL universe, the Steph try, yet how little nobody cared about the Nico Hines one, despite the fact he didn't even slide into the in goal at all. So, yeah, that one to me was, yeah, I almost smiled. I think I might have smiled when it happened. Not because I enjoyed it, but just because it was just a case of going, well, I don't know who was in the bunker that night, but they were off. There were a couple of roos short in the top paddock, that one.
100%. There's not much more I can add to that because it's funny that you say that they blew up about it. Not blew up about it, but it blew up in the media about Steph's try and not about Nico Hines. Look, it's leading a little bit towards a conspiracy theorist again. Who knows? But the third try was actually Katoa's last try in the last minute when he dived over and Buller actually knocked the ball out of his hands and then put his hand under the ball. How that was given a try? I don't know. The funniest thing is I saw someone on a Facebook group that I have with the West Tigers, and he's like showed a screenshot of the ball down with his finger planted on it. But yet he didn't show the screenshot prior to that where there was clear separation from his finger to the ball. So it's just fun. Like it's fun being a West Tigers supporter when not only are the cards stacked up against you, it's just added on from, look, I'll go away from the conspiracy theorists and just say incompetence. Like the amount of mistakes that are made from the bunker is sometimes
concerning.
It's
yeah.
In any other job, you make that many mistakes, you boot it.
Yeah,
and
I think the football punter at large, generally speaking, can, I guess not forgive mistakes, but I guess it would be more something more along the lines of saying, look, I understand the 50-50s aren't always going to fall their way. It can be frustrating, especially if you don't seem to get any of them. However, to your point, if you're in a different job and you're constantly making these types of mistakes, then it's some big ones too. I mean, how many more resources do the people in the bunker need? They get every single angle possible, and they've even got their get out of jail free card with, we don't have enough evidence. So there's no reason to get decisions that are objective incorrect.
No.
Maybe you put 3 people in there. Maybe you have a best of 3, and you have 3 bunker officials that decide on what majority rules we press the button. I don't know what the situation of the case is.
To be honest,
an interpretation is an interpretation, right? And Annesley sometimes will come out on the Monday and he'll say something like, "This is how that rule was interpreted, and here is why." And you can disagree with the interpretation. The referee's boss's interpretation is the only one that matters. So fair enough in those instances, right? But like the examples that we've spoken about, and the couple of tries, or the 3 tries for that, to your point, that we mentioned, they're not an interpretation issue. They're not how I perceive the rule. They're a cut and dry, black and white. That is the rule. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're the rule. It's, it's baffling. Again, I think I've used that word like 6 times in this pod because that's what it was by the end of it. I was just hands in the air and not waving like I just don't care. They were just, yeah. It was, yeah, well, probably best to move away from I guess, what went wrong and what went right. For me, I'm happy to
I
say,
thought we were harping. I thought aren't we harping?
yeah, but I got nothing else to
We're
harp
moving
about.
on. Oh, right. Sorry.
Well,
So
I've
when
got a
I said
lot.
that
I've
before,
got a
you
lot to
had,
harp about. I've got a lot to
yeah.
harp about, but like we
But
don't
when I
have
mentioned
4
that before,
hours.
you just had a bit more harping to do. Is that's all it was?
Yeah, I think that was a bit it. I think the
Okay.
listeners needed to know what my frustrations are and what they were, and feel some form of
Hey,
sympathy.
mate, you've had several weeks to build it up, so you're probably just ready to let
Yeah,
it all let the floodgates open.
yeah. Look, it's I haven't been able to vent. Well, I have been able to vent, but I think my wife's getting sick of it.
Just
So
well, we certainly are in our private chats.
yeah, yeah. No, you're not. You're not going to get over that.
No, you're right. Okay, all right. It was worth a shot anyway.
No.
Hey, mate, what did you like about the game? Was there any performances that stood out to you?
Um, Probably one that's stood out for me, probably in a wrong, probably not in the best way, was probably Tupou. I love his returns. His confidence under the high ball is a bit concerning for me. He's dropped a few easy sitters last couple of weeks, and two of them actually almost led. One definitely led to a try. The other one was, obviously taken away because I think Raymond obstructed or pushed a blocker. But
Yeah, so he pushed. Was it Toa?
Toa, yeah,
Or yeah, so he pushed Toa actually into Tupou before he touched the football. I dare say that's probably one of the main reasons he dropped the footy. I guess in those situations, a little bit of contact mid-air, you probably should be good enough to take him. But
I don't think he actually
Toa,
even contacted him. That was the thing. I think.
yeah, no, so he did, but then they showed a subsequent angle twice later that didn't look like it. But the first angle, you clearly see his elbow contacts his leg, and his leg moves a few inches to the right before he touches the ball. But they
You
didn't show
don't you
that
don't
angle after that.
you don't
So
catch the ball with your legs.
I do. How do you catch it? Oh, you never caught a footy. Okay.
Oh, I've caught a
No, but
footy when I was
when
a
you're in
water boy.
yeah, from the past, when you're in when you're in the air, any sort of bump or anything can throw you off. So once I saw that replay, I was like, oh, I'll forgive you a little bit for that. So understood. But yeah, I get your point. I do about Tupou. I think I think young players in those back three are going to have moments like that. Now we've seen Buller
Oh
contested ball, but we've seen him drop a couple in the last couple of weeks as well. And I
no,
think that
I don't. I
is
don't disagree.
one of
Like I
those
don't.
things that we'll see a bit.
Yeah, I don't doubt that, and I'm not. That's the thing. I'm not chastising Tupou or anything like that. I'm just saying it's a little bit concerning. And I am going to put this straight away down to I guess his inexperience. Same thing, excuse me, with Buller. A lot of that stuff. Like Buller's a freak of nature. Very, very happy he's ours until 2026, I think. That's when he re-signed to. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong.
It was signed until the end of this year. I think he extended for two, so that'd be the end of 2025, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when the Roosters will come calling. Um,
It's
so
a fair while, mate. It's another 2 years after this year, and that gives us till November next year, I think, to extend him, which I know the club, from what we've heard, is keen to. Anyway,
yeah.
I digress. Carry on.
But from like I think I mentioned just at the start of the pod, the thing that I was happy about or pleased about was the back row reverting back to the way that's been working. And it was very clear that it works. I think that we tied up Paulet tied up that middle very, very well. He's not a ball playing lock yet. He could be, but like you've mentioned it time and time again, his quick feet is definitely worrying for the defense. But the thing that I think doesn't get enough credit from him is how much he ties up that middle. Um, he the edge the three edge players, they do the most work or they make the most important decisions in defense, I believe. Your back row, your center, your wing, they all make the most important decisions in defense. But a strong middle can definitely make it a lot easier on them three. And I think that's what he does. I think he has very good first contact. He definitely slides well, which is great. And he's like, you watch him out of marker, there's a couple of instances at the start of the year, he was a little bit lazy and a few things went through the middle, like a few very quick hookers went through the middle. But he's improved on that out of sight. And that's really pleasing for me. Like, he only played the back end of last year and he's played every game this year. But if he has deficiencies in his game, you see that there's an improvement almost instantly. It's like he watches tape of himself and he knows where to do it, or Benji's working close with him, or Ferner, probably Ferner more than anyone, is working close with them about their deficiencies. And he's not a noffer in the fact that he'll improve for a couple of weeks and then revert back to his old ways. He seems to take it on board and he just keeps improving. And so that's super. Like you've rated Pole well before he even debuted, and there's very clear reason why. And which makes
He's very young too.
Yeah, which makes me very excited because you also have another young guy coming through that you rate very, very highly in Fargutu. So that's if you keep nailing these on the head, we got some real guns coming through. So
yeah, well, we don't talk about the ones that I've missed, but
you have a better
really
strike rate than I do. So
the problem is I just read too much and I just follow too much of the junior grades ad nauseum almost a little bit. But no, I enjoy it. I really do. I enjoy seeing the names and enjoy hearing and watching what the young guys are doing, because I'm a big believer that the development thing is something we should have been doing for the last 25 years. But I believe that that's the way you build a successful club, particularly in our predicament. We've spoken about that before. So
we did it quite well for a little bit. We did it quite well for a little bit. We brought Moses, Tedesco, Woods, and Brooks through together, and then we just stuffed that up royally.
Yeah, and coincidentally, all the funding drained out. Not coincidentally, all the funding drained out of the junior development system at the time that they were sort of out the door, because the clubs were going in a different direction and they wanted to start spending and buying. So it's no coincidence that it's been bone dry in that area, in the junior system, in many ways, for the last 8 or 9 years since they left, or 3/4 of them left, because quite simply the funding wasn't there, which it now tenfold is back up and running. So really pleasing to see. Like I liked what Bloor did, to be honest, and to be frank, I think that's 2 games in a row that he was okay. I know the Cowboys game, it was hard to see anything positive, but he was about the only bloke who had a decent crack in the Cows game and played some bigger minutes. And he's been in the side for a little bit now, but I think where he's at the moment, him coming off the bench in that edge / pseudo middle role, I think he played a bit more middle on the weekend to start, and then I think he might have shifted out to an edge at some point, where obviously he got through on that beautiful lineup of Seyfarth try. What I would like to see Bloor a bit bigger, to be honest. I think he's a little bit slight for the game that he likes to play, but he does it pretty well. I like the fact that he's got a high work rate, a high motor, but he also provides impact, and it's a really unusual combination, and he can run lines. I don't see him having any great deficiencies in his game, which is wonderful. And I don't see Shawn Bloor as a superstar necessarily, but I see him as a very solid player, a very up-tempo player, and the type of person I was talking before about how the likes of Appy and whatnot can lead that tempo in defence. I see Bloor as being able to do the same. I'm not saying he does it all the time or every set, but I can see him growing into that type of player, because he seems like the type of player that Todd and I spoke about last week, a momentum changer. We saw that in his debut when he took Nathan Brown on head first, who at the time was, I think he was an Origin player at the time, and he was a kid, 19-year-old kid, and he basically just said, "Run at me 3 times in a row, and I'll whack you every single time." Yeah. And so I think he had that capacity, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of that. Was it the Cowboys game where he made that clean break up the middle?
Yeah, I think so.
Can't remember. Or maybe he made two clean breaks.
Yeah, it wasn't the
possibly. Game before, possibly.
I think I personally erased that game from my memory, if I'm being honest.
the last month has been a bit of a blur, if I'm being honest too. I get confused as to who we played when. Uh, Canberra, I think what we do, Canberra, Melbourne, Gold Coast. Is that how it works?
Canberra, Gold Coast, Melbourne.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, and he scored that great try on the weekend, so I was really pleased with that. To your point, you mentioned earlier, I thought Seafarth had a really good game, and I think we've said all along that Seafarth, excuse me, sorry, Tuesday. If Seafarth can get rid of the penalties and the errors in his game, then he's a solid squad player, and he's the sort of player that you sort of want in that 30-man squad. Would you agree?
Yes, because we've never questioned his effort. His effort has never been a question. It has been the fact that sometimes he's he's the tuber in the string section, doesn't need to be there and just makes that stupid error. Other times he's just stupid in terms of giving away a penalty that doesn't need to be given and the momentum completely shifts. And then other times he was, for a while there, he was, odds on for a couple of very clean errors that were unforced. So, but yeah, the last month he's been serviceable. He's been improving. I'm wondering if, that's something about, just simplify your game. I just need you to run. I need you to tackle. That's all I need you to do. But in saying that, he was that link a lot against the Sharks. He was the pass out the back, either the wraparound or the offload. So
Yeah,
yeah,
he's got surprisingly good hands, doesn't he?
he does. He does. So if he can keep that up, I think he's off contract this year, or is it next year?
Yeah. Now he's off contract this year.
I'd put him on 300,000 for 2 years. He'd definitely be serviceable.
Yeah. 300 for two.
Yeah.
Or 300 per year.
Per year. I don't think 150 is I think the base for a top 30 these days is 200. So
no, the base is 120, but the NRL are proposing that it become 150 by 2027.
Isn't 120 New South Wales Cup players?
No.
No, is that
120 is minimum wage at the moment? Yeah.
Oh, it's not bad minimum wage.
So, dollars aside, it's probably a good segue, mate. There's a few people that are off contract, and we've obviously got our squad issues at the moment, which no doubt the club is working overtime to try to patch up.
Yeah.
And as we continue to try to move forward in this plan, this development, this junior, bring the juniors through, and hopefully we build a strong club plan. We are where we are. Let's be honest, mate. There's a few players that are off contract at the end of this year. The big ones, Dane Laurie, not big ones, but the notable ones, I guess, so far, Dane Laurie, Charlie Staines is another one. Brandon Wakeham is another one. Yeah. Mate, who, honestly, considering the spots we have available, would you re-sign? And how long would you re-sign them for? And maybe give me one, and we'll just bounce back and forward if you even have one, or if you let
I
them
probably
all
have two. I probably have two. One is by necessity. The other is because before he was injured, he was one of our best. So I'd sign Charlie Staines to a 2-year deal. I think he proved his worth before he was injured. The fact that he played that whole game again, I can't remember who he injured himself against, but I think it was before the Penrith game. Was it a perforated stomach? Perforated bowel. Yeah. Played a whole game through that. It's pretty tough bloke. So I definitely sign him. I think he's our starting winger by far. Him and Tupou.
Plus, he's a goer. He was a goer, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
he brought the ball back into the team.
There was no fear.
He's a lightweight, but
there was no fear.
He's not just blinding speed, but useless as a footballer. He brought, to be perfectly honest, he brought a little bit more as a footballer than I thought he would. And I was really excited by what he was doing. His finishing ability was brilliant. His meterage out of the backfield was fantastic. So I would love to see him back.
Yeah, same. So he's one I'd love to re-sign. And obviously the other one by necessity is Wakeham. Whether he's our starter next year or not, regardless, he's done a serviceable job, and he could be a very handy backup in case, something happens. Just in case, we sign Jerome Hughes, and he's a backup for him. So that's not going to happen.
That
Okay.
on the cards, is it?
I don't know. I'm hearing the media you know, we're tied to every half going at the moment. So
Mm. Even if they're not going,
even if
even
they're
if they're
not
under
going,
contract
you
for the
know,
next 4 years. Yeah. Okay, so those two. So Dane Laurie, can't find a spot for him. Seafath, can't find a spot for him.
look, Dane Laurie, I'd probably still re-sign him. Look, we won't have Brooks on the cards next year. I think have we even filled up our 30 this year? I don't think we have. I think we're still at
No,
one spot.
no, we're 29 spots available. First week in August, first Monday in August.
Yeah.
So we've still got 3 weeks on.
Yeah, I'd keep Laurie in a couple of years. I think he is a 5'8". I think he didn't get enough of a show against the Cowboys, which it's again, he's not the reason we lost. We lost because we don't know how to defend. And at the same time, like you guys said on the pod last week, it was one of those games where everything went their way. Everything. So I'd sign him for another 2 years, I think.
You do too
I do
for
too.
Dane.
Yep. Safarth, look, I think we've got better juniors coming through, to be honest. If they re-sign him, I wouldn't if he re-sign him and he keeps up playing the way he is now, I wouldn't put my hands up and say why. I think he probably has done enough to prove that he can handle that. But I would personally use that for a Matamua or maybe a James. I think Astasi James. That guy's legs are huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah.
It reminded me of when Junior Totola debuted for us. I was at that game live actually, and I remember sitting there looking and going, "Holy crap!" He's like, I'm a big guy, and I reckon his thighs were bigger than my waist. They're huge.
Mm. He's
So
a goer. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of fringe forwards and forwards that are coming through that can fill similar roles to Seafath. I think Seafath has probably got himself to at a stage, at least how he's playing this year, where his development has been uh, he somewhat, I guess, completed his development, if that makes sense. He sort of hit his ceiling in a positive way. I think he's become a good backup player now. I think he's a good fringe first grader that if he's in the side, I'm certainly not inspired, but I'm not overly worried anymore. I think he would do it. I think he does a good job. But like you mentioned, there's a few names that you mentioned there. James, Matamua. We've got Kit Lowley, who's banging the door down in Flegg. We've got Fa'agutu, who's going to need a shot soon. He's 19. We've got Tumith, who's still there coming through. We've got Brendan Webster Mansfield. I think he's in top 30 next year, whose development contract. We've got Sione Fauna, who's now starting at lock in reserve grade, who's the eldest or the second eldest, either one of the Fauna brothers are trying to get across from Manly. And that's not even mentioning a whole host of others. We've still got Twoll who can't make the run on side. We've got Sean Blue who can't make the run on side at full stroke. So I don't think that we lose too much by not re-signing a Seafath or someone, to
no.
be honest. I think someone like a Dane Laurie personally has to be in the 30. I'd only give him 12. I like what you did with Staines. I'd almost give Staines 2 with the third mutual. Staines is young, and I don't see a massive winger upgrade anytime soon. I'd give him almost 3 Staines, to
Yeah.
be honest, because I can see Charlie Staines. Did he win a premiership in Penrith? Did he play in a premiership winning side?
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
He was on the
I
wing
think
for one of
last
the
I think
best
last
finals.
year. I think last year he was on the wing.
Okay, well there you go. With Kalen May out, was he?
Yes. I
Possibly.
believe so.
Either way, he's certainly heavily featured in their squads in the last couple of years in premiership winning squads. So it's not as if he's good enough to be a premiership winning winger. So do you really need much more of an upgrade than a Charlie Staines? If one comes along, sure. We don't have any juniors banging the door down as elite level wingers, and he might not necessarily be elite, but he definitely offers plenty.
He offers plenty than a
He'd
lot of
probably
us.
be well, if you look at Noffa, him and Junior Tupou. There's no other out-and-out wingers I can think of. We've got Asuka Poa starting on the wing, for goodness sake, this week, who was a second rower to start the year, need I remind everybody. Staines has an argument to say that he's probably, particularly the games he's featured this year, our best winger in the club at the moment.
Yeah.
Tupou's had his moments, but he's super green. And Nofaluma's Nofaluma. He's just rocks and diamonds when he can be bothered. So, yeah, three for Staines for me. And I'd re-sign Laurie to a 12-month. I'd put that to him and say, let's just go year on year at the moment and see how things pan out. I'd like to have him in the squad. I think Wakeham, to your point as well, I think Wakeham, I'd do him 12 months.
Yeah.
Similar, maybe slightly upgraded on this year's deal, considering that he's played starting halfback or starting half for the vast majority of the season. So he probably deserves a little extra 50K bump or something as a thank you. And I mean, the last 5 or 6 weeks, he's literally carried the side. He might not have done the most bang-up job, but he's been trying his best out there, the young fella. So good on him for that, 12 months in that regard. And yeah, Seafar's probably the one to cut loose, but I'd have to look and see how many spots we've got available next year before I go dishing out freebies, because I do know that Tim Sheens has been giving them out with the development players like they're Skittles. I heard the other day that Lachlan Galvin, who is another one of our guns coming through, big, rangy 5'8".
Top 30 squad next year.
Yeah. So he got leaked by him randomly in an interview that hadn't been announced anywhere, that he was in the top 30 next year. So I'm assuming that has been a recent development, because as far as I was concerned, he wasn't even on a development contract for next year. He was signed to junior contracts, but, just featured in Australian schoolboys. So he's only 18 years of age. Think talent to silver, but not that talent is super physically developed for his age, but he's physical enough. I don't know how Galvin would go, particularly if he plays 5'8", but he can play back row, and that's where he'll end up when he fills out. But the type of body like his, he's going to take 3 or 4 years to really fill out. So, my concerns in terms of how Sheens has done that has been, I don't know, interesting to say the least. He was the one that signed Tristan Riley over, who hasn't featured in a game. He was the one who put Sione Fainu in, who hasn't featured in a game. And there's always, every club has players like that, but we seem to have quite a few. So depending on what we had available spaces-wise, would, I guess, depend on those types of decisions, wouldn't they?
Yeah, definitely. And you also mentioned, there was one person that you mentioned there, but you did mention he's off contract, is Noffa. So Noffa is off contract as well. You don't re-sign him?
He's not off contract.
Are you
He's
sure?
not off contract till the end of 2025. Yep, it's a horribly long contract.
No,
I'll confirm for you now, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, can you confirm that for me? Because I feel like he's at the end of a very long contract.
Yep. So Nofaluma is on contract with the Tigers for a further 3 years. He is due to remain with the joint venture until at least the end of the 2025 season.
Yeah, I thought he was off contract.
Yeah.
But at least he's been tapped on the shoulder to take and look somewhere else.
He has been, and wouldn't be overly disappointed if that was to happen, would we?
Nope, not at all. It's a drain on our cap.
Hey, mate, this Friday, the West Tigers play Newcastle Knights. Should we have a little bit of a look at the upcoming game? What do you think?
Oh, we're gonna skip over the fact that we're signing Brodie Croft. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm 100% skipping over that fact because that's not happening.
Good times.
It's funny to be in this position when you've got money, because everybody, as you mentioned before, they just throw your club's name next to anyone, basically, and just hope that something sticks. But the club will not be signing Brodie Croft. Aiden Caesar is a possibility, considering he might be coming back as a stopgap. But but I don't know that those guys are really on the radar truly. But I guess we'll find out. Something will happen, because every other club that has money seems to be moving and shaking.
Yeah.
Bulldogs in particular, just they meet with everyone and sign everyone. Yeah, it's complete crickets from us. So hopefully that's because the leaks have slowed down and not because we're just doing bugger all.
Well, I read today there was one name that I was going to float to you because he's off contract, because he had an absolute blinder, and in years a half is Blake Taff. I was going to say there's a potential, but I read today that apparently he's had a meeting with Gus and the Bulldogs.
Well, he did, but Gus has met with a lot of people. He meets with just about bloody everybody, I think, and he doesn't fit into that side. You've got Carlo Lawapu, who they think is a lock now, even though they signed him from Brisbane because Brisbane wanted to play him as a hooker, or they possibly wouldn't run him as a 5'8" straight away as an 18-year-old. He's a 5'8". Carlo Lawapu is a 5'8". Matt Burton is a 5'8". They've just signed Toby Sexton, and so what are they going to do? How many halves do they want at that club?
Weren't they
You know,
on? Weren't they looking at someone
they've
else as
signed.
well? I saw
Talk
they're
about
looking at
Tino
another.
with that pub. Tino with the pub deal.
No, another half.
Jaden Sullivan. Jaden
That was
Sullivan
it. Jaden Sullivan.
from St
Yeah.
George is another one. Yep. And they got Stephen Crichton to play fullback. So if Taff goes there, he'll play. He would be fighting for Matt Burton for the 5'8" spot. So not happening. And he's not a halfback. So, but excuse me. Not only given his game the other night, but he was exceptional. I watched that game really closely because I wanted to watch him among others, but he was awesome. He was really good. I'd sign Blake Taff as a 5'8" tomorrow.
Yeah.
Considering where we're at, considering what we've got at the moment, I'd sign him tomorrow to play 5'8".
Yeah. Good, me too. I'm glad we're both on the same page, but we won't because that's a smart decision.
Yeah. Well, he would have to agree to it, obviously. Have to agree to an offer, but yes, have to wait and see. But before we do look at the Newcastle game, even though I brought up the fact that we should do that in a minute, there's been a lot of talk and speculation about the Fainu brothers, Samuel and Latu. They're obviously not conjoined twins; they are separate individuals. But it seems as though it's a bit of a package deal at this stage. It seems as though they've decided to leave Manly. Spoke last week about how one of the relatives of them had posted on the Manly page the fact that just thanking Manly for everything they did for the boys over the years, and that they'll Manly always hold a special place in their family's heart. Scuttlebutt out of the club last week, not out of the club, sorry, just out of the Twitter sphere or the rumour mill, was that Tartak, their manager, who also manages a few of our younger stock in our stable as well, DDS and Josh Felitti, just to name a couple, isn't super, I guess, won over or overwhelmed by our pitch. It's not the money issue. I think he has concerns apparently about the way the club's heading or the direction. And if there's truth to that, which it seems as though it's come straight from the horse's mouth, from what I've seen, then it's going to be a situation where we have to sit there and try and figure out, one, have we allowed a connection with Scott Fulton and a family, a good couple of young up-and-coming players from Manly who live in Western Sydney or whose family come from Western Sydney, have we buggered up, basically, the opportunity to sign these two young guns who are not necessarily NRL superstars out of the box, but they certainly are pretty highly rated across the country. I've mentioned several times before, the likes of the Bulldogs of all clubs again keeping an eye, and Dolphins as well. I don't see how they fit at the Dolphins, to be honest, with Sean O'Sullivan, Katoa up there. They've got Milford up there and someone else who is escaping me. I can't think. Nicarima. There was someone else as well, possibly they were talking about another possible signing. But yeah, anyway, so look, from what I've read, it doesn't sound wonderful. It doesn't sound great with their actual manager not being super impressed with the way the club is headed, but whether or not that's a wake-up call to the club, and that was sort of leaked out to let them know, hey, pick your game up a bit here because you're an option, but you need to make sure that you look after these blokes. I don't know. So the answer is a pineapple in that regard. They have, both of those boys are actually in the under-19s New South Wales State of Origin side, which plays at Redcliffe. Is it this weekend coming?
Yeah, I think so.
Possibly, yeah. So whenever that is, I'd be keen to watch. I'd be keen to almost maybe go and watch that live to see what the movements are happening in our lives at the time. But yeah, I don't think we'll hear anything on that for at least a couple of weeks at the earliest. And don't know, at certain times, people who nobody knows, to be honest, other than the two boys and the manager. But at certain points in time, we've seen as though we've been a lock and lock them in for first grade next year. At other times, it's like, well, we're at the bottom of the pile and we've got no hope. in hell, despite the fact that everything points to them coming to us. So, yeah, we'll have to see how that one pans out.
Yeah. It's funny that you say the club with no direction, all that stuff. Just want to we've talked about this at length, probably more in our private in our chat rather than on the pod, but the two leaders of the club, there's that old saying, the fish rots from the top. I'm not even, yeah, same thing. Well, the top's always the head.
The top of the fish is a dorsal fin, mate. You know you're
Not if
fishing
you're
around.
not if you're holding it up right. It's the head.
It's still their top. If I hang you up by your ankles and shake you upside down, your feet aren't the top of you.
At that point in time, they are.
Moot point. I'm not being able to hold you up anyway.
It wouldn't be a Tiger Town podcast if we didn't go on a useless tangent. But yeah, it's been suggested that I'm not even bother trying to pronounce his last name because it just annoys me. We'll say Lee. Lee Bryden.
Hadji Pentelis.
There we go.
Hadji Pentelis.
Lee Bryden. I'll just call him that. That Bryden's lawyers sponsorship runs out at the end of this year. And at the end of this year, those two will step down. And there has been suggestion how much stock you put into it, who knows, that the old New South Wales Premier might actually step into the role in Dominic Peru.
Perrottet.
Is it Perrottet? Peru?
Perrottet.
Perrottet, yeah.
Perrottet. Yeah, there's been a few names that have been mentioned up about that. I personally don't think that either of them will fall on their sword. And I actually think that, despite the fact that Lee loves the sound of his own voice, I think what he's done for the club has been amazing in that how much money he pours into the club. I think what Justin Pascoe has done in terms of his side in the administrative side, I should say the financial side, to your point, he's a chief financial officer instead of a CEO. But what he's done in terms of getting the club back in the black and getting centre of excellence and all that sort of stuff has been nothing short of spectacular. It's allowed us in many ways to be able to have such an expansive coaching structure and pour so much money into development, all these sorts of things. The only thing that these blokes haven't overseen is a winning football side. That's all it is. If we were managed to pluck 3 superstars out of 3 other teams for whatever reason they signed on with us, we've got the money. We start winning football games. No one's talking about it. Literally no one is talking about them. You got so many other clubs that have had their moments of being basket cases in the head office too, and still won football games, and no one spoke about it. Manly's infighting for the longest time was, if it made the Tigers look like a playgroup, some of the stuff that would carry on with Penn and the likes over there with their ownership system over there. But they were winning football games. And so it wasn't really a big thing until the Pride jersey fiasco last year sort of blew it up a little bit. But I don't want to make this a big admin pod, but I haven't heard what you're talking about, so that's news to me. So that's interesting. From what I've heard, those blokes aren't the types to fall on their sword, and the board is pretty set in concrete, and the fans and the members don't have any voting rights. Unfortunately, it's just a unique setup there at West Ashfield, who owns a majority stake in the club, and it's just one of those situations where they are the immovable object. So I don't know that anything drastic happens on board level. This is just my opinion moving forward, but yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see whether or not that is the case. I don't agree that there's no direction of the club. Actually, this club has more direction now than it's had since probably 2011 in many ways. We know who the coach is and who the future coach is going to be. We know who all the gun juniors are and that they're all locked up. We know where the pastoral programs are. We know the names of our junior development officers, Shannon Deland, Matt Betsy, and Noddy was even doing some work around that. We understand where this team is headed. They're just not winning football games at the moment because their squad sucks. Sometimes the media and commentators in general, and I understand we're commentators, I guess, in many ways because we're commenting on football, but sometimes too much gets made of all the one percenters around the football team, when the bottom line really is how are the teams being coached and who's in the squad. If your coaching tactics are shithouse, like Madge, Jason Taylor, these likes, or your squad sucks, you don't win football games. When you don't win football games, apparently everything is wrong with the club from top to bottom. I don't think everything's wrong with this club from top to bottom. I think the development structures are brilliant. I think the fact we're financially solvent and we're making good money is brilliant. I think our facilities are brilliant. I think that the amount of spending we're putting into the football department is brilliant. We just got a shittish squad that we're trying to improve, and we're just not winning at the moment. So I don't know. It's just another perspective, but I don't know how we got onto that from talking about the Fayunu boys, but yeah, it's just a different take, I think, and it's not to say that initiatives don't matter from board level down, from administrative level down, don't matter in a football club. And when a club isn't winning, that they don't have some sort of an impact. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think at times it can be overstated. And if those blokes were failing in their jobs in terms of their job description, then you'd understand it. Or if the football team was winning, would people still be calling for Lee and Justin's heads? No, they wouldn't. That's the bottom line. So the difference at the moment is our team is not winning football games. It hasn't for a while, yeah, I can see that. But it's not as if this team and this squad and this administration and this club at large is not doing everything they can to not win football games. What club out there invests tens of millions of dollars, which is what it costs to run a football club, to not win footy games? Fucking zero of them. So, you know, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you got to step back a little bit, I find, and step back from the games a little bit, and I guess put some of this stuff in perspective. And I think that Cowboys game forced me to do that, because I like everyone else, was very at my wit's end with what has been a really hard decade in following this side, and it's not something that is optional for us. It's something that is basically in vitro with us Tigers fans, the true blue West Tigers fans, the one that it's in our veins and we can't do anything about it. So yeah, I sort of took a little step away and didn't watch a replay of that Cowboys game. Can't blame me. And then watched the Sharks game a little bit more casually. And yeah, I think that we take a deep breath and sort of look with one eye to the future, but with maybe a hopeful sense, is a little bit of an easier way to allow you to swallow it. That being said, I'm not immune to the pain of what's going on at the moment. All right. Yeah, Toby, Toby's just ducked out to the loo for a moment. So I'll go through very quickly now. And I did go off on a bit of a tangent there, so apologies for that. But we do that a little bit on the pod. Toby's just back in there now, so I'll just throw it to you, mate. Did you want to add anything to that, or are you happy for us to jump into the Knights preview?
No, let's just jump into the Knights preview. I think we've talked enough about the admin.
Sounds good to me, mate. So at fullback, Jerome Buller, number 1. We've got Kapoa and Junior Tupo on the wings. Stafford Toa and Tommy Talau in the centres. Will Smith, who ended up playing 5'8" last week, is starting in 5'8" 6 this week. Brandon Wakeham is the halfback. Steph Utoikamanu and David Clemmer are the props. Apasai Coruscant returns as hooker and captain. Papali'i and Bateman are the edges, and Fanua Polo locks the scrum. Jake Simpkin is the 14 replacement hooker. Bloor, Twal, and Seyfarth round out the bench. Excuse me, sorry. In the extended reserves list, we had Dane Laurie, A. Tati James, Talon De Silva, Justin Matamua, and Brent Naden in number 22. Anything stand out there, mate, with the side this week? We spoke obviously about Appy earlier.
No. It looked like that's pretty much what I think that's, apart from probably Brooks being there, I think that's probably our strongest side we can put on the bench at the moment. I probably would even include that in the in our centre pairing. Naden's been very underwhelming for me this year. I think he played maybe 4 or 5 good games at the start of the year. And then he's just yeah, he's made some very poor choices in defense, a lot of brain snaps.
Mm.
I think
Talau's
Talau,
been average too, but he had a pretty good game last week.
yeah, I think that was his best game. I think that's his best game in West Tigers colours for me.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, no, it seems like it's stock standard. But yeah, it's very, very pleasing to see Appy back. And yeah, like up against, we know that what Ponga can do. Now he's back at fullback as well. Got that time, got that step. Having the edges tied up the way that they are with Bateman and Publi back, or Publi's never moved, but Bateman back on the edge. Well, that makes me less worried. Still worried about him. Excuse me. Ponga's a absolutely classy player. He's an absolute game breaker. We know that, but having solid back rowers in there can definitely limit his time. So,
Mate, what do you see? You mentioned Ponga, obviously. Do they have any other major threats, the Newcastle Knights?
maybe Frizzell. That's it. I think Hastings came out and said a couple of weeks ago he wants to get back to his running game. Definitely did that in the flogging of the Bulldogs. I think his running game was on point. He is a solid half. He hasn't set the world on fire since going to the Knights. But I think that I'm hoping we have a point to prove. Uh, Against them after the showing that we had last time we played them, which was like round 3, I think. But yeah, no, not really, other than Ponga. I think, Gamble's your natural pest that will get in the face of everyone. Best, look, we won't even bother previewing Origin either. But Best got picked. I think you guys did it last week anyway, which is fine. I he can have a very good game when he wants to. I think this year he's had one, and off that one performance, he got an Origin jersey. But apart from that, nah. Well, the thing, I guess, who's back from injury is Dane Gagai. And Dane Gagai, we know the classy player he is, but he hasn't been that great this year either. So the only thing I can say is they've got a lot of players that can have good games, and generally those type of players have good games against us. So
Yeah. Yeah, the types of players that stand out for exactly what you just said, who tend to have a good game occasionally, and it's against us, the likes of like Lachlan Fitzgibbon.
yeah,
Leo Thompson had a big game earlier in the year. Tyson Gamble, same thing, reserve grade half, 5'8", I was going to say half, who I think he had 2 or 3 tries just against us earlier in the year. So, yeah, it's Dominic Young. He's the type that could catch fire in a game and score 2 or 3 tries. Yeah, so it's obviously a dangerous game. We're obviously outsiders. We're coming last, so we're outsiders in just about every game we play at the moment. But how do you see the game playing out, mate? Can you see us getting a win? Are we a chance?
with Appy back, we're definitely a chance. I think, I think he's just such a big inclusion. It's going to be hard for me to say yes that we're going to win this game. I think that it's going to be closely contested. If we get some of those, 50-50 calls go our way and the bounce of the ball somewhat goes our way, yes, I think we'll win. But again, you just never know. You never know who's in the bunker. You never know how things are going to go. And it is in Newcastle, but at the same time, the Knights haven't been setting the world on fire in Newcastle either. So, look, I'm going to say this with a bit of hesitation, but I'm going to say we're going to win. And I'm going to say we're going to win by 8. So I'm going to say 22-14.
All right. I've got the Knights as a bogey side. We've got several, and I think they're one of the bogey sides. They've never been going very well since the early 2000s in many ways, and it seems like every time we play them, just about they tend to get the better of us. So, yeah, I'm going to actually say that we won't get them. but it's one of those games where we definitely have the capacity to be competitive and most certainly have the potential to win the football match. And as you said, having Appy in there as well makes a huge difference too. So I'm going to say that we won't win, although I'm hopeful that we do. I'm going to say it's not going to be. I'm going to say it's a relatively close one. I'm going to say they get the jump early, as has been the case, or our Achilles heel for most of this year. I'm going to say they go out to a 2 or 3 try lead early. We scrape it back to a try, and they score a try or 2 at the end. So I'm going to say it's a 28-16 finish scoreline. 5 tries to 3 is the end of the game, of which they start the game 12-0, 14-0, something like that. So I have to see how we go. In the bold prediction front, I think, sorry, I just didn't, if you just heard me there a second ago, but I said that I reckon they'll get the jump early and 12-0, 14-0, something like that. And we'll scrape it back to a try, and then they'll score 1 or 2 late. I'm thinking something like 28-16. But I certainly think that we are capable, and a win is a possibility. We've just got to have a good game and have a bit of fortune. They're certainly very beatable, Newcastle, most definitely. Now, bold prediction time. You always get to go first. Always. So I'm going to say that this week we're going to have Jarian Buller, who's been a little bit quiet of late, have a bit of a stormer. I'm going to say he's going to have 2 clean line breaks. He's going to have 1 try assist and 1 try. But one of the line breaks is going to be nearly a full-length effort, as in it's going to be a full middle of the field, our end sort of break.
Very cool. Look, I wouldn't be upset with that in any way, shape, or form. I don't have to do my always prediction anymore. Like I said, that's done and dusted. 12's got the try. That's fine. For me, I think the return of Appy is going to actually see Appy score over from dummy half. He's going to bolt over. But also, I'm going to see him set up 2 tries, and it's going to be 2 crash plays. So
who scores them?
I think I think it's going to be both our fronties. I think it's going to be Steph and Clemmer.
It'd be good to see Clem get one against his old side.
It would.
Maybe over the top of a Jacko or something, just to rub a bit of salt in the wound from the stuff earlier in the year. Tommy Talau too, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, that'd be
from
good.
The broken jaw, 2 broken jaws we've received from
No, I got a
tackles
broken
from
nose.
opposition players.
Talau got a broken nose.
It was a broken nose, was it?
Yeah.
Right. Broken facial.
Yeah, broken face. Let's just say that.
Yeah, he broke his face. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, that'd be good. And yeah, at least it is nice to get into a game against a bottom 8 opposition, knowing that if we play well, we're every chance, which is a nice feeling because the last few weeks, at least, Cowboys and Sharks, it's been pretty pessimistic heading into the game, particularly with the injuries we've had.
Yeah. No, it hasn't been fantastic thinking about a game moving forward because we had Melbourne by Cowboys, Sharks. So teams that finished in the top 4 last year. So their quality.
Yeah. So the Knights will probably spank us then because of all this positivity.
Let's just put some of that in the universe, eh? Let's just keep that going and, maybe luck will shine on us this
maybe
week.
Maybe the footballing gods will actually bestow a little bit of good fortune our way because
it's been a while since they have. Been a while since they have.
We are fucking due for it.
Yeah.
Any final notes before we wrap the show up with our PSAs?
Nah, no final notes for me. Just glad to be back. Glad to talk about the Tigers. Really hoping for a win this week. I think that we are definitely deserved after that Sharks performance. And hopefully, I think for the Knights, it's a bad thing they had the bye after the performance against the Dogs. I think they needed to keep that momentum going. So I'm actually glad they've had a bye. So yeah, I think it'd be good to get one back on them and hopefully climb off the bottom of the ladder.
Did we have the bye after the first Cowboys game? We did, didn't we?
We did, yeah. Yeah.
And then we played the Raiders.
Yeah.
and came out slow.
Yeah.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see that. It's funny that we beat a team by 66, and then they beat a team, or we scored 66 against the team, had a bye, and then they scored 66 against the team and had a bye.
Yep. And then we played at home and started slow. They're playing at home. Hopefully start slow.
And then we lost in Golden Point, and so hopefully they lose in Golden Point.
No,
It wasn't Golden Point, nearly Golden Point.
nearly Golden Point. Yeah.
Right.
They
All right,
decided
mate.
to
Well,
work it to the left instead of trying for a field goal. It was great.
So 8 o'clock Friday night at McDonald Jones Stadium up there in Newcastle. Any Novocastrians in the area, get down, put on your white, black, and orange best, and get down there and support the lads. We know that is as important as it ever has been to get out there and show them your full support of the boys. Mate, every week we mention the fact that there's 2 other podcasts that do things better than us. That is West Life Podcast. That is the West Tigers Podcast. Said last week, those 2 podcasts don't like each other, but we love them both because we love Tigers content and we think they all do great things. Go on over there to both of those podcasts, give them a listen, and tell them who sent you. The boys from the Tiger Town podcast. They're going to know who we are, no doubt. Mate, Facebook page, YouTube. Get on the Facebook page, Tiger Town Podcast, YouTube channel by the same name. Subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Make sure you make a comment. Keep sending DMs. We tend to get a handful a week, which is nice. And keep them coming. Keep that interaction stuff coming. It's a big thing, and it's wonderful feedback for us. This is a hobby for us. We love what we do, and we love the fact that people are genuinely letting us know they're enjoying listening to us each week, even if we're off on tangential rants, as it were. Mate, that's it for now. We've got a game on Friday night we can get a little bit excited for. Sitting here in my orange and black finest, and nothing else to say, mate, but go the Tigers.
Go the West Tigers.